Robert Bianchi is former head prosecutor in Morris County, New Jersey, now a host on the Law and Crime Network. CNN legal analyst Jennifer Rodgers is a former federal prosecutor. Good to see both of you today as we look at this and we just hear the reporting from Caitlin about what the plans are at the White House. And we hear the term executive privilege thrown out there. Jennifer, I'm curious, what is the standard in this case? When we look at these 81 different people and entities, where could executive privilege honestly be applied?
Well, that's a great question because unlike attorney-client privilege, executive privilege hasn't been litigated very much at all, so we don't really know the outer bounds of it. It's supposed to be something that protects advice between the president and his closest advisors, right? We want the president to rely on people in these areas where others have more expertise than he might. The problem is here, again, we don't really know what the outer bounds are because it hasn't been litigated yet. And I suspect that if they don't like the looks of where things are going, if they don't like the looks of the Mueller report, that's where we'll see a really broad kind of blanket approach to exercise to executive privilege, with, if nothing else, will at least delay things for a while that is litigated in the courts.
And in what respect, that has been a tactic that we've seen, right? Delayed in the court.
Right. Actually, to Jennifer's point, there have only been two cases. It was one in the George W. Bush administration and then the Obama administration, where for the first time they pushed back on Congress's right to issue subpoenas and said, we claim executive privileges. And those two cases, while they were in favor of Congress's right to issue subpoenas, got so bollocksed up and tied up in the court, and that was before it even went to the appellate process. It never has been reviewed by the Supreme Court of the United States. Eventually, Congress and the president came to an accommodation. But if Donald Trump, who is known to push the areas of constitutional boundaries and separation of powers, decides to say, I'm going the full route, Jennifer, I think you'd agree, this could go on for years before a court makes a final decision.
Wouldn't that be fun? Going on for years. Speaking of things that are still going on, so there's some new reporting in the Wall Street Journal that Michael Cohen's attorneys did want to discuss a potential pardon. That in and of itself, not illegal, right, to have that conversation, perhaps not surprising, but is there anything that is fishy or a little wrong here, Bob, or is this just an attorney doing their job for Michael Cohen?
Well, we know as prosecutors that we always say we use cooperating witnesses all the time that don't come from the best pasts or backgrounds and always have an incentive and motivation to testify. But we also say when you sleep with dogs, you can catch fleas. So when you go in there and you're going to rely upon him, whoever is advancing him as a witness or somebody in their favor, he has to be pristine from this point forward with regard to all the data and information he gives. And if he makes a bald-faced lie, and we don't know if that's true yet because these reports and where the data and information is coming from, we don't know, substantially compromises the rest of his testimony, especially in my mind, most importantly, when he said there was a phone call that went on that I listened to with Roger Stone speaking to the president about Julian Assange and the email dumps that were coming. And if that conversation can't be substantiated and we find out that Cohen lied again, if in fact that's proven with regard to this pardon issue, then I think it pretty much substantially undermines the value of his testimony.
When you're talking about the value of his testimony, when you're looking specifically at the pardon issue, in that reporting, the Wall Street Journal said that the attorney, and I'm quoting here, left the impression that if Michael Cohen couldn't rely on a pardon, he might cooperate. Does that also undermine what we've heard from Michael Cohen?
Well, listen, there's no question that when you get yourself into criminal trouble, as Michael Cohen clearly was after the FBI executed search warrants against him, they look at all of their options. That's what people do, right? You think, should I cooperate? Should I fight it? If I fight it, how far should I go? Who should I hire as lawyers? You do all of those things. And in this case, there was kind of an extra wild card thrown in, which is, hey, I could get a pardon here because the president of the United States is my former client and I would be testifying against him, right? That's a situation that really no other cooperator,
it's rather rare.
except Cohen and all these other folks are facing. So it's not at all surprising that he would kind of take stock of all of these options. I think that's completely normal. And I don't even think it's a big deal if his lawyers in those early days kind of, poked around a little to see whether a pardon was in the offing. The issue, as Bob says, is, did he lie about it? And I don't think he probably committed perjury, but even if he was just misleading in the sense of saying, no, I didn't go for that, if he knew his lawyers had, then he has a real credibility problem.
Right, because when he was asked about it, he said specifically, I never asked for a pardon, which, could be 100% truthful, because if his attorney asked, he wasn't the one doing the asking. I also want to get your take on this. So Representatives Liu and Beyer are calling for criminal investigation into Jared Kushner's security clearance. And what's interesting is they note in their letter, look, we know that lying is not a crime. However, they point out, if you did lie on your questionnaire, your application in essence, for security clearance, that's an issue. Is this something that has legs, do you think?
I don't think it has legs as a criminal issue. I mean, you know, Congress has an oversight role here. It is entirely appropriate for them to look into this decision-making process, what impact the president had on it, whether he interfered. All of that is fair game. You know, I don't think we're going to see a criminal case here, even if they do find that Kushner misled people on his forms. That's typically not a criminal issue either in the normal case, so I don't think it'll go that far, but I think the inquiry is fair.
What do you think? What's your take on it?
I kind of agree with that, but I also look at it from a more pragmatic standpoint. That would have to go through the Department of Justice in order to be prosecuted, if they were even going to do that, of which Donald Trump has complete authority over the Justice Department. So I just don't think it's going to be something that's going to go to that level. But I think it's something that we really need to look at as a country. I filled out lots of applications, and I was concerned about making sure I was exactly correct in everything I said, because I filed those applications under the penalty of perjury. And in this particular situation, it just wasn't a one-off. It's over and over and over again.
Not, oh, I forgot that one thing.
And
there's more to it.
And my prosecutorial temperament, I don't know about you, Jennifer, is sometimes you got to make a statement. Sometimes you got to say that these forms have meaning, these oaths have meaning, and if they're continually, repeatedly violated, I need to make a point of it, even if it successfully doesn't come to an ultimate guilty conviction.
Is Jared Kushner the right person to pick to make that point?
Well,
that's a tougher one.
Yeah. Well, he could be, because this, again, is something that's gone on and on and on. He's had a lot of involvement in foreign affairs, which is another thing. And a lot of this has to do with the disclosure of finances in foreign affairs. And one of the big
Or the lack of disclosure.
Or the lack of disclosure. And one of the big things our founding fathers were extremely concerned about was the idea that our government officials could be corrupted by the influence of outside foreign influences. To me, it goes to the core of the concern of the founding fathers and why there's a separation of powers in order to make sure that does not occur. There's a lot of serious issues here.
And the other thing is there are a lot of these other people that we're talking about as having potential criminal liability, Don Jr., you know, and others kind of in the president's family. Kushner wasn't involved in many of those things. He's certainly not implicated, as far as we know, in the campaign finance violations and such. So to the extent that they want to make a statement against Kushner, this may be the kind of easiest, cleanest way to do it.
Right. Jennifer, Robert, always good to see you both.
Good to
Thank
see you.
you.